For as much as colonialism was about slavery, land, and territory, a major motivation for the colonialization of the Americas was gold. Rumors of gold drove the colonial heathens into crackish frenzies, roguely traversing into enemy jungles with all the vigor of a meth addict on the hunt for a big score. Looking for cities of gold, many a heathen died on his quest to find the hidden treasures within the jungles of Mexico, Central, and South America, as well as the canyons and deserts of Western North America. Throughout the ages, gold has always been a symbol of status and wealth amongst the ancient civilizations. The precious metal was prized among the wealthy elite as well as the poor. The adornment of kings and prized as a possession above any other precious metal. Gold, especially in Eurasia and the Middle East, was extremely scarce, and due to this scarcity, it attained extremely high value across world markets. Not only as ornamentation and decoration, but also currency. Gold has always set the standard for the ancient economy. So when the heathen heard that there was gold in Demdare Hills, they were ready to kill anyone who stood in their way. The extraction of gold from the American continent was used by the colonial powers to finance their expeditions to the Americas. Many people may be surprised to know that these expeditions were not completely financed by the crown, as commonly assumed throughout the historical narrative. One may even be surprised to know who actually funded these expeditions, or maybe not surprised at all.
Deal with it.
They can't stop us. No matter what they do, they can't stop us. Lex. They can't stop us. Lex. Nah. They can't stop us. Yeah. We ain't build no slave ship. We ain't make those anchors. We ain't plot those grave sites up since daylight. Burdened by the things we try to make right. It's gonna be a late night. So much turmoil makes my blood boil. Kundalini encore. Earth to sun broad. Dirt that's unsoiled. With one chord, tell a story that some spoil. Watch it unfold. Stories untold. Copyright unsold. Books with one spine. Ghosts with one soul. They want control. You want control. But we share one goal. We fight one foe. Satchel front door. And it keeps knocking, but the people kept rocking. Yeah. It keeps knocking, but the people kept rocking, yeah. Stop, flex, whatever they do. They can't stop, keeps knocking, but the people kept rocking, yeah. They can't stop us, no, nah, they can't stop us, no, they can't stop us.
In this episode, we highlight the history of gold in the Americas and the role it played during colonialization. We also compare the role that gold played in pre-Columbian America to the biblical narrative. If America is Egypt and the ancient Holy Land, how does the role of gold play within that history? And what is the context by which the colonials confiscated gold from the indigenous tribes? We will take a look at specific areas within North, Central, and South America where the most gold was confiscated and the most artifacts discovered. Some would say it's all about the gold. When the village pillagers saw the Indians and their excessive gold wealth, the pillagers saw their greatest opportunity for a come-up. Greed was the ultimate motivation behind their fiendish attitudes toward the yellow magic. The heathen couldn't believe their eyes when they saw these Indians wearing all gold everything, from gold necklaces, headwear, earrings and bracelets, to gold plates and bowls. Gold was being used in a way the Caucasoid could not believe. Some would even call the Indians apathetic in their indifference about their gold, never being coveted in the way it was by Europeans. Their gold psychosis perplexed the Copper Indians. The Indians could not understand the heathen obsession or their willingness to risk their own lives in pursuit of something so trivial. In ancient America, vast quantities of gold could never make kings. No matter how much gold a man possessed, it could never make him a king. He could never buy a kingdom. But in Europe, gold was king. It was the power behind currency and prized among all possessions. Gold could be traded for land, slaves, and power. This is contradictory to the way of the Europeans. In America, only war made kings and kingdoms. But in their world, kings and kingdoms could be bought. Before getting started, it's important that we understand that this official historical information must be taken in with a few grains of Morton kosher, due to the fact that the historical narrative is the conqueror's narrative, sure to have holes, deception, and disinformation within. So it is imperative for us to extract the credible information to ascertain the truth in between the lines. The first legends of gold in America, concerning Europeans that is, involved pirates and the Caribbean. This is where the legends of gold grew, during the first interactions between Indians and Europeans. The Spaniards in particular noticed that the Indians were wearing gold bracelets, headwear, and had a recognizable surplus of gold. This early observation served to whet their willies to the dreams of gold and wealth. Guanin was the name of the gold-like metal used on the island of Hispaniola by the Taino Arawakian people. Guanin was comprised of 56% gold, 18% silver, and 25% copper. This even pointed to the evidence that the Indians were already using alchemical and metallurgical techniques to create hybrid alloys, something thought to be beyond the capabilities of the Indians was a well-documented practice. So not only did they possess immense stockpiles of gold and silver, they also had the skills to manipulate the metal. According to charlatan carbon dating, the indigenous people in the Caribbean had been smelting gold, silver, and copper since at least the 1st century BC. The Europeans had no idea that the Indians had been smelting metal for millennia. According to historian Bartolomé de las Casas, in 1498, during the voyage of Columbus, he was told by local indigenous tribes that there had come people from the south and southeast, a black people, who had the tops of their spears made from a metal they called guanin. Las Casas also recalls that after not being provided a coffer full of gold by the Indians, Columbus massacred a large number of them in one of the most heinous and savage accounts from his narrative on the history of the Indies. This testimony by the Indians pointed to a larger distribution of precious metal on the mainland continent that somehow made it from South or Central America to the Caribbean. This caused the pirate pillagers to ask questions and inquire, "Arg, matey, where did all this gold come from?" This is the moment when the pirate pillagers begin to make incursions into the mainland continent, especially in the areas of Mexico, Central and South America, where the legends of the mythical city, or maybe not so mythical city, of El Dorado were born. The most infamous narrative about Spanish conquistadors ransacking gold involved Hernan Cortez and the Mexica Aztec Empire. Cortez came a few years after Columbus and spent his first time in America on the island of Cuba, aka Hispaniola, as a tax collector, ensuring the crown received the royal fifth, or 20% of the profits from their plunder of the Indies, the Carlos Quinto, the Pharaoh Fifth. Keep this in mind moving forward. Cortez spent many years, over a decade, in Hispaniola, aka Cuba, as an agent for the crown of Charles V. During his time on the island, over a decade, Cortez had a few run-ins with the governor, Diego Velázquez, but through his position as overseer of the king's money, Cortez was able to use his relationships, experience, and most importantly, financial resources to build a small army of hungry heathens, cannibal Caribs, and indignant Indians, and don't forget, shysters and swindlers to jumpstart the prophecy. The first reports from the mainland, "Unspeakable hordes of silver and gold are possessed by all the people in this region. Every man who fights will become rich and fulfill his lustful fantasies." Bound for the mainland with hundreds of hungry heathen recruits for his expedition, Cortez supposedly landed on the shore somewhere in the Yucatan, Maya territory. Now, as I said earlier, all of this so-called official historical information should be taken with a grain of Morton kosher. So I'll spare you the nuances about the Cortez narrative, because I've done it before, and to be honest, it could all be bullshit. I only want to extract a few main points as it concerns the Gold War. Cortez supposedly initially met Montezuma under somewhat diplomatic conditions. But after being gifted gold by Montezuma and the Aztecs, Cortez continues to press for even more gold, relentlessly inquiring about where to find more. On top of this, the conquistadors were known for using their visual intimidation by riding in groups on horseback and firing their weapons in the air as an exhibition of their power and potential military dominance. Now, with all this being said, it's important to note that Cortez was accompanied by a significant group of Jews during his initial conquest. This tidbit of information goes unnoticed within the entire narrative. Charlton's Web quote, Jews in Mexico history. The history of the Jews in Mexico began in 1519 with the arrival of conversos, often called Marranos or crypto-Jews, referring to those Jews forcibly converted to Catholicism, and that then became subject to the Spanish Inquisition. What? The Spanish Inquisition? That's crazy. During the period of the Viceroyalty of Spain, 1521 to 1821, a number of Jews came to Mexico, especially during the period of the Iberian Union, 1580 to 1640, when Spain and Portugal were ruled by the same monarch. That potential circumstance allowed freer movement by Portuguese crypto-Jewish merchants into South America. When the Portuguese regained their independence from Spain in 1640, Portuguese merchants in New Spain were prosecuted by the Mexican Inquisition. When the monopoly of the Roman Catholic Church in Mexico was replaced with religious toleration during the 19th century liberal reform, Jews could openly immigrate to Mexico. They came from Europe and later the crumbling Ottoman Empire, including Syria, during the first half of the 20th century. Today, most Jews in Mexico are descendants of this immigration and still divided by diasporic origin, principally Yiddish-speaking Ashkenazim and Judeo-Spanish-speaking Sephardim. It is an insular community with its own religious, social, and cultural institutions, mostly in Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara. So apparently the Jews were also persecuted in Mexico. By the way, these Jews get persecuted everywhere, man. I wonder why they were persecuted. They came as merchants. Like, why would you persecute a merchant? I don't get it. I don't get why. If they were just merchants, right? Innocent merchants. Why would you want to persecute a merchant class? He's not even violent or anything, right? No, but they're persecuting the merchants. All right. Okay. Continuing Charlton's Web quote. Jews and conversos were part of the conquest and colonization of Mexico and key participants in the transatlantic and trans-Pacific trade networks, as well as development of domestic trade. Conversos accompanied Hernan Cortez in 1519. These were members of Jewish families which had been forcibly converted to Christianity to avoid expulsion from Spain after the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula from the Moors. The reconquest was followed by the Spanish Inquisition, which made conversos one of their targets, with accusations of reverting to Judaic practice. During this time, there were two types of conversos: crypto-Jews and Jews who fully converted to Catholicism. The Jews who converted were used to report crypto-Jews to the Catholic Church, and consequently they were awarded with high power positions within the Catholic Church. Furthermore, during this time, the Catholic Church was in charge of social welfare and was the most powerful entity. Converso migration to the new Spanish colony began in 1530, after most of the violence from the conquest of the Aztec Empire had subdued and the Spanish Inquisition continued. For several decades, the families were able to live peacefully, integrating into Mexico's elite, with some becoming prominent Catholic clergy and some returning to Jewish practice. It's always this Inquisition. Hey, what are you doing? What are you practicing that makes me want to kill you? Even in how it's being presented historically, we know the pin behind this. we have to read in between the lines. They're saying that they're prosecuting the Jews for practicing Judaism. Really? Hey, you better not, you better be working on the Sabbath or I'm finna kill you. What you doing today? You better be working. Oh, you ain't trying to eat no pork, nigga? What? I'll kill you. Is that why they were getting killed? For practicing? What do people practice that would get you prosecuted or persecuted? For practicing? What are the elements of this practice? Continuing, Charlatan's Web. David Nathan proposed that the first coins minted in the Western Hemisphere by Spanish conquistadors in Mexico City feature a Hebrew letter, Aleph, suggesting evidence for a Jewish presence or influence in Mexico in 1536. Oh, brother. He notes that nearly all the dyes prepared under the tenure of the first assayer used the purported Aleph symbol in place of the Christian cross potent mark, found almost universally on medieval Spanish and Mexican coinage. Nathan goes on to consider possible Jewish family connections to the known early Mexican mint workers. Whoa. Nathan goes on to consider possible Jewish family connections to the known early Mexican mint workers. Now that makes sense. What were the Jews doing there? What are they minting, by the way? What do you think mint workers? Oh, every time there's like a fucking banging ass quote, hey, it'd be like 404, page not found. I'd be like 404, nigga. This information no longer exists. You know what I'm saying? That's how it be. It really be like that, though. There was Jews in Mexico at the same time. They was with your boys. Presumably, practicing Judaism. That's what they were doing. They came to practice freely. I wonder, what's... Never mind. Let's get back to the story. Well, like I told you, the story's all bullshit anyway, but we'll get back to it. Cortez was given a slave girl by the name of Malinche from the Tabasco Gulf region in eastern Mexico. She served as an interpreter between the area tribes during his expeditions. She eventually became Cortez's wife, and they have a son, Martin. He is considered one of the first, if not the first, of the mestizos, the new face of Mexico. To the Mexicans, La Malinche has become a historical and cultural icon, some looking at her as a folk hero, a feminist folk hero indeed, helping to establish the Spanish in Mexico through her wonderful ability to translate and her beautiful diplomacy. While others call her a traitorous twat of a harlot who helped the Spanish kill her own people. Despite this, La Malinche has been elevated over the centuries by Mexican pop culture as an icon. And she's even been referenced in several books and movies. Cortez continued to recruit rival tribes on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, including the Tlaxcala, who hated the Aztec. This divide and conquer mode of operation was commonly used throughout the history of colonialism. Whether it be the Spanish, the French, or the British, they always worked to turn the tribes against one another, especially in order to gather military forces for their takeover and minimize their own losses. It was never the Spaniards or the French or the British who did the majority of the fighting. So it was never the Spaniards, the French, or the British who did the majority of the dying. This is why the tribes always lost the greatest number of people in the conflicts. The heathen tactics were at minimum savage, brutal, treacherous, dishonest. There was no bar too low for the savage European to stoop, whether that was killing children, babies, killing women, or even using disease as a weapon. There was no amount of evil they could not imagine. As I have stated before, it wasn't war that killed the Aztec, aka Mexica Empire, and it wasn't smallpox that killed them. It was salmonella. As referenced by this study in Nature in 2018, 80% or as many as 17 million indigenous people in Mexico died from salmonella, not smallpox, according to their DNA analysis. This means that coming into mere contact with Europeans was a deadly encounter for the Indians of central Mexico. In this narrative, the Spaniards were always outnumbered at least 10 or 20 to 1 by the Indian allies who partnered with them from the surrounding tribes. This was not only true in Mexico, but in South America as well as North America. Cortez's soldiers and indigenous allies were able to take Montezuma hostage, essentially making him their puppet. Historical accounts conflict on whether Montezuma was killed by the Spaniards or his own people. Cortez and a few of his men narrowly escaped the city. In their swindlish gluttony, many of his men, in their attempt to steal large amounts of gold, which ended up weighing them down, died during their escape. Thus, many of his men drowned in the lake because of their greed for gold. Specifically, these are gold artifacts that were found in Mexico and Central America. These are what you would call Aztec or Mexica gold artifacts. These are what you would call Mayan gold artifacts. Look at these. You notice something peculiar about each one of these? Can't put my finger on it, man. But something, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know about this, man. I just don't know. Why don't they look like why don't they look Mexican? I'm just gonna say it. They don't look Mexican. They don't look Chinese. They don't look Filipino. Listen, man. You're not finna get me with this right now, bro. I just, for some reason, want you to see the artifacts that were found in Mexico and Central America. Something very odd about them. Just can't figure out what it is. I guess maybe you can figure, I don't know what it is. Maybe you can figure it out. Just something so odd about these artifacts. It's probably nothing. Probably nothing. Gold is mentioned over 400 times throughout the Torah and Tanakh. The context of the word has a few different meanings, and we will discuss those as it relates to the different definitions and usages in the text. The first mention of gold is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. These verses relate that the land of Havilah has gold, which is good, and along with that gold can be found bdellium and onyx. We assume we know what onyx is. Bdellium, however, is a mystery. It has been described as either some type of tree resin, spice, or gemstone. The only other mention of bdellium is in Numbers 11, verse 7. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium. This verse relates that the manna from the Exodus has a color of bdellium. A reference to the color of manna, and the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. From this description, all we know is that bdellium is white. But there's not much more than that we can gather from the context of the verses given. There have been many speculations about exactly what bdellium could be. The most common hypothesis among the charlatan hierarchy is that bdellium is some sort of tree resin or tree gum, but the context does not explicitly suggest that. Due to the fact that it was mentioned with onyx and gold, both stones, in my estimation, bdellium is a stone of white or crystalline appearance, and not a tree resin. But that's just my opinion. Nevertheless, back to the gold. The second mention of gold is at the beginning of Genesis chapter 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. This verse basically relates that when Abram left up out of Egypt, he had acquired more money than a Somalian daycare owner. To gain perspective on this gold, we jump back to Genesis chapter 12. When Abram and Sarai entered into Egypt, Abram told Sarai to say she was his sister for fear that the Egyptians would kill him and take his wife. Arriving, the men of Egypt, seeing that Sarai was very fair, brought her to Pharaoh. Pharaoh, being well pleased with her beauty, intended on taking Sarai to be his wife. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh on behalf of Sarai. Abram had used the sister is my wife scheme on Pharaoh to gain favor. The whole time he thought Sarai was his sister, but she was his wife. This situation was more deception by omission than an outright lie, considering Sarai was actually Abram's half-sister. They both shared the same father, Terah. Verse 16 of chapter 12 relates that Pharaoh entreated Abram well for Sarai's sake. He had sheep, oxen, he-asses, manservants, maidservants, and she-asses and camels. It is possible that the silver and gold mentioned at the beginning of chapter 13 was also gifted to Abram by Pharaoh, because there is no mention of his acquisition of gold in the narrative beforehand. The third and fourth mentions of gold are in Genesis chapter 24. These verses actually give a little more insight into the context and usage of gold. The verse states, "And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of a half a shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold." This verse is describing the early narrative of Rebekah. Abram sent his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac. Seeking her hand in marriage for Isaac, the servant bestows gifts upon Rebekah and her family. The verse relates that a shekel is described as a unit of weight measurement. The weight of the gold determines the overall value. Later in the chapter, verse 53, the servant brought forth jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. From the verses in this chapter, we can determine that gold has value by weight, and in some cases, used as jewelry. The next mention of gold in Genesis 41, verse 42. This is the narrative of Joseph being elevated to a leader in Egypt under Pharaoh. "And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck." And put a gold chain around his neck. This verse is describing a ceremony. Pharaoh puts a gold chain around Joseph's neck. There seems to be some sort of initiation taking place where, by virtue of Pharaoh adorning him with a gold chain in a ceremonial nature, Joseph has now become a stamped and certified leader in Egypt. At this point in Genesis 41, gold has barely been mentioned 10 times. The next mention of gold is in chapter 44. Verse 8 is the first time gold and money are mentioned together. In this chapter, Joseph, who had become a leader in Egypt, recognizes his brothers, the same brothers who sold him into slavery when he was young. They haven't seen him since. He conceals his identity, and they don't recognize him. As the narrative goes, Joseph set up his brothers in somewhat of a ruse or test of spirit. He commanded his steward to put his silver personal cup in Benjamin's sack, along with the brothers' corn money. When the brothers leave, they are pursued, overtaken, and accused of theft. They declare that the one found with the cup should die and the rest become slaves. The cup is found in Benjamin's sack. Judah pleads to Joseph, still not recognizing his younger brother, and relates to Joseph of their father's love for Benjamin, and if he doesn't return, the sorrow would bring their father to his grave. Judah offers himself as a substitute for Benjamin. This chapter sets the stage for Joseph to reveal his identity in the next chapter. Before this chapter, money had been mentioned on separate occasions, but exclusively without the mention of gold. These verses bring money and gold together. The first mentions of money in Genesis 17 pertain to buying of a person or the buying of a child in reference to circumcision. In this circumstance, any man or child born in the home or bought with the money of a stranger need be circumcised. The next mention of money in chapter 23, Abram asked to buy the cave in the field to bury Sarai and to have a burying place for as much money as it is worth. Verse 15, "My Lord, hearken unto me, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that betwixt me and thee? Bury therefore thy dead." And Abram hearkened unto Ephron, and Abram weighed to Ephron the silver, which he had named in the audience of the sons of Heth. 400 shekels of silver, current money, with the merchant. In this chapter, silver has become synonymous with money, whose weight is also measured in shekels. It's noteworthy to mention, according to nearly all biblical concordances, the Hebrew term for money is kasef, and the Hebrew term for silver is also kasef, denoting a root or relationship between the two. Comparatively, the term for gold is zahab, used nearly 400 times in biblical text. In the post-exilic books of Ezra and Daniel, it is called dahab. Additionally, zahab appears to be a noun and adjective, which could also mean from its shining. Kasef and zahab are often mentioned in the same verse, implying a relationship, but also implying exclusive differences in the context. The primary countries in South America where the most gold was taken was in Venezuela, Colombia, and Peru, as well as many other areas. On the hunt for El Dorado, numerous hordes of dirty Diego Spaniards, putrid Portuguese, dingy Dutch, and a slew of other semi-ambiguous, shyster-financed, double-crossing packs of pilferers invaded the rainforest like that shit was the capital on January 6th.
They were peaceful people. These were great people.
Until they met the same fate as the men who drowned in Lake Texcoco. But opposed to drowning with gold, they just drown in their own asinine ambitions on fruitless journeys into infinite forests, mountains, and the vast landscape of the South American continent, never to be seen again. The smarter of the desperate desperado dumbasses abandoned their gold fantasies, cut their losses, and punted the ball, realizing the unfavorable matchup against the terrain they needed to traverse, and instead opted for preservation over prosperity. It seems like in nearly every example of these explorers looking for gold, when they inquired of the Indians, they were told consistently to go further inland. Most likely a setup. The Indians knew that the further inland the Europeans traveled, the less likely they were to survive. And it wasn't like these areas in South America were lacking gold in the least. Quite the contrary, they had tons. But it was too hard to acquire and too dangerous to locate. Prospecting for gold, even if just travel and supplies for a journey into the unknown, requires an extreme amount of risk for an unguaranteed reward. Therefore, most of these explorations never passed the feasibility test. This area also produces several different varieties of precious gemstones, unlike any other place on Earth, from onyx to emerald and other precious stones mentioned in the Bible. Charlatans's Web quotes, "The Welser family was a German banking family and merchant family, originally a patrician family based in Augsburg and Nuremberg, that rose to great prominence in international high finance in the 16th century as bankers to the Habsburg and financiers of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor." What? Along with the Fugger family, the Fucker family, along with the Fugger family. The Welser family controlled large sectors of the European economy and accumulated enormous wealth through trade and the German colonization of America. And accumulated enormous wealth through trade in the German colonization of the Americas. We don't hear much about that, do we? The German colonization of the Americas, including slave trade. The family received colonial rights of the province of Venezuela from Charles V, who was also King of Spain. Oh. Remember, these are Germans. In 1528, the family received colonial rights to the province of Venezuela from Charles V, Carlos V, who was also King of Spain in 1528, becoming owners and rulers of the South American colony of Klein Venedig within modern Venezuela, but were deprived of their rule in 1546. Nothing ended. It said they were deprived of their rule. Were they deprived of their money? Philippine Welser, famed both for her learning and her beauty, was married to Archduke Ferdinand, Emperor Ferdinand's son. You see what's going on here? Do you see yet? Claiming descent from the Byzantine general Belisarius, the family is known since the 13th century. By the age of discovery, the Welser family had established trading posts in Antwerp, Lyon, Madrid, Nuremberg, Seville, Lisbon, Venice, Rome, and Santo Domingo. The Welsers financed not only the emperor, but also other European monarchs. They're financing the monarchs. Who's got the power? This is a hidden hand here. The Welsers financed not only the emperor, but also other European monarchs. After the Reformation, both Welser and Fugger families remained in the Roman Catholic Church. They remained in the Catholic Church. Now, what about this Fugger family? What about the Fugger family? One thing that I did find interesting as I'm looking at this on Charlatan's Web is that the Welser family has a red and white fleur-de-lis. But as we know, the fleur-de-lis is commonly associated with the French. They were given colonial rights to the province of Venezuela. Do you think that their money still flows through Venezuela today? Considering everything that's going on in Venezuela, you think they still tapped in? What do you think? They were given the colonial rights of the province of Venezuela. During exploration, Venezuela is one of the places where they found gold. Remember, gold was found all in this area. It wasn't just Venezuela. It wasn't just Colombia. It wasn't just Ecuador. It wasn't just Peru. It wasn't just Guyana. It wasn't just Brazil. There's gold in them there hills. Let's see what the Fugger family's talking about. The House of Fugger. German pronunciation, Fugger? Fugger? Fugger. The House of Fugger is a German family that was historically a prominent group of European bankers and members of the 15th and 16th century mercantile patriciate of Augsburg, international mercantile bankers and venture capitalists. Now look over here. We see the coat of arms for the House of Fugger. It's a fleur-de-lis, except for this one is actually blue and yellow. Members of the 15th and 16th century mercantile patriciate of Augsburg, international mercantile bankers and venture capitalists. Who does that sound like? Guess some Roman Catholics, right? Right? Let's keep reading. Alongside the Welser family, the Fugger family controlled much of the European economy in the 16th century and accumulated enormous wealth. The Fuggers held a near monopoly on the European copper market. This banking family replaced the Medici family, who influenced all of Europe during the Renaissance. They replaced the Medicis? We're getting closer. The Fuggers took over many of the Medici's assets and their political power and influence. They were closely affiliated with the House of Habsburg, whose rise to power they financed. They financed The Habsburgs. Did you ever think that the Habsburgs needed a bank? The House of Fugger. This is the House of Fugger. What a word. Oh, brother. Unlike the citizenry of their hometown and most other trading patricians of German free imperial cities, such as the Tukers, I guess that's how you say that, such as the Tukers, they never converted to Lutheranism, as presented in the Augsburg Confession, but however remained with the Roman Catholic Church, and thus close to the Habsburg emperors. The House of Fugger. By the way, a patrician family is a hereditary family of merchants. The bloodline of the merchant. Now, secretly, what are they telling you here? Who are these people? Is it just some silent merchant class? Jacob Fugger, Jacob the Rich, was elevated to the nobility of the Holy Roman Empire in May 1511 and assumed the title of Imperial Count of Kirchberg and Wissenhorn in 1514. Today is considered one of the wealthiest people ever to have lived, with a GDP adjusted net worth of over 400 billion and approximately 2% of the entire GDP of Europe at the time. While the company was dissolved in 1657, the Fuggers remained wealthy landowners and ruled the county of Kirchberg-Wissenhorn. The Babenhausen branch became princes of the Holy Roman Empire in 1803, while the Glatt branch of the family became princes in Bavaria in 1914. These are German families, princes in Bavaria. Bavaria is the home to who? The Freemasons, the clandestine Illuminati. Bavaria, Germany. Who else lives in Bavaria, Germany? Who is the merchant class? Why is this important? Because obviously the kings don't rule like you think they do. Why did the merchant become so important? Who are these people? They're telling you who they are. They're merchants from Germany. Who are they? Shouldn't have to say it at this point. You should know. At the height of his power, Jacob Fugger the Rich was sharply criticized by his contemporaries, especially Ulrich von Hutten and Martin Luther, for selling indulgences and benefices and urging the Pope to rescind or amend the prohibition on levying of interest. Hold on. And urging the Pope to rescind or amend the prohibition on the levying of interest? Who does that sound like? The imperial fiscal and governmental authorities in Nuremberg brought action against him and other merchants in an attempt to halt their monopolistic practices. Who does that sound like? So first, he was selling indulgences. And just so you know what an indulgence is when rich people would pay off priests to forgive their sins that were unforgivable. Excuse me, Father. I need to be forgiven. What did you do? I murdered a whole family. All right, it's gonna cost you. It's gonna cost you a lot. How does 1 million sound? You are forgiven, my son. That's what an indulgence is. People would commit heinous crimes, rich people would commit heinous crimes, and then go to the priest and pay for forgiveness. Selling indulgences. Who does that sound like? Who sells indulgence now? All these rich people have to do is buy forgiveness? Did you know you can buy forgiveness? Yes, you can. It will cost you. Selling indulgences, monopolistic practices, and the levying of interest. The Fugger family, the Welser family. These are the families who financed The king. Why does the king need a bank? Who are these families truly representing? These families aren't rulers, but they rule the rulers. Their titles are hereditary and cannot be taken. All of these families go back to Rome, subsequently, Edom. Genesis chapter 47, verse 13 through 26. Verse 13, and there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread. For why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. And Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. You see what's going on? There was a famine in the land. So the deal Joseph makes, I will give you bread, give me your cattle, give me your sheep, give me your horses. And the people gave Joseph their cattle for bread. Verse 18, when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Lord. How is that our money is spent? My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed, that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. This is deep. There's a few things here. These people have sold themselves into slavery because there's a famine in the land. But is this a natural famine? At this point, these people are willing to sell themselves into slavery for what? Not just bread, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. They're asking for seed and willing to sell themselves into slavery for seed. But if they can buy seed, is the land really desolate? Or are they being withheld? The idea is that nothing could grow on the land due to this famine. Oh, it must be drought. So if it's drought, what could we possibly do with seed? And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt, even to the other end thereof. Only the land of the priest bought he not, for the priest had a portion assigned to them of Pharaoh. and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. Then Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day. I have bought you this day. I have bought you this day, and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. Verse 24, and it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh. And 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. And they said, Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. They are volunteering to be Pharaoh's servants, and Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day that Pharaoh should have the fifth part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. The fifth part, or 20%, but the fifth part. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day that Pharaoh should have the fifth part, except the land of the priest only, which became not Pharaoh's. So why is this important? If you remember, during the saga of Cortez, he was a tax collector for the crown, ensuring that they got the royal fifth, which was 20% of the spoil from their plunder of the Indies. The idea of the royal fifth, or in this case, the Pharaoh fifth, was born in Egypt. Charlatan's Web quote, the royal fifth, Spanish Quinto del Rey, Portuguese Quinto Real, is a historical royal tax which reserves to the monarch 20% of all precious metals and other commodities, including slaves, acquired by his subjects as war loot, found as treasure, or extracted by mining. The royal fifth was first instituted in medieval Muslim states. From interpretations of the Quran, though the extent to which it applied was debated between schools of Islam. It's almost like they didn't know about the history, because we know that chronologically, Genesis was before the creation of Islam. But secretly, are they telling you something else? Maybe they're lying to you, but also secretly telling you the truth. During the age of exploration, Christian Iberian kingdoms and their overseas colonial empires also instituted the tax. Though to encourage exploration, some monarchs allowed colonists to keep some or all of the fifth. The royal fifth apparently goes to the king. So Hernan Cortez was a tax collector, and he was collecting the tax for the monarch. But was he though? During the famine, the supposed famine, Pharaoh buys all the cattle, all the sheep, all the horses. Then the next year, there's another supposed famine. Pharaoh buys up all the land. The people offer themselves up as slaves for Pharaoh if they could only eat. Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day, and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. They put themselves in voluntary bondage for a famine that was manufactured. If the land can grow seed, and seed is supposedly free, why bond yourself into slavery for seed that should be free? Does the seed not grow unless it's given to them by Pharaoh? This entire story gets into the ownership of land, voluntary bondage, and obviously taxation. The royal fifth, which was collected by Cortez for the king, and the Pharaoh's fifth, which was made into law by Joseph. Let's get back to the Welser family. You know, the German family who owned Spanish territory. The Germans who owned the Spaniards. The unusurpable Germans. Bartholomew Welser V lent the Emperor Charles V a great sum of money, for which, in 1528, he received as security the province of Venezuela, developing it as Klein Venedig, Little Venice. Apparently, that's what Klein Venedig means? Okay. But in consequence of their rapacious acts, the Welsers were deprived of their rule before the emperor's reign was over. His son, Bartholomew Welser VI, explored Venezuela along with Philip von Hutten, and both were executed at El Tocuyo by local Spanish governor Juan de Caraval. Whoa, they were executed. They must have done some real rapacious shit. That's crazy. I wonder what kind of rapacious things they were doing. From 1528 to 1556, 7 entradas, expeditions, led to the plunder and exploitation of local civilizations. But these colonial foundations led to the future trade in the Americas. The first governors of Venezuela, Ambrosius Alfinger and Nicholas Fetterman and George von Speyer, captured and enslaved local Amerindians after their failed attempts to find gold on the Venezuelan coast. The Welsers contributed to the establishment of cities such as Cora, Maracaibo, and Bogota. Bogota is in Colombia. The Welsers' hold of the slave trade in the Caribbean began in 1523 as they had begun their own sugar production in Santo Domingo. Ooh, German sugar. According to historian Julia Roth, in 1532, the company purchased the sugar mill Santa Barbara in the department of San Juan de la Maguana through the Welsers' overseas agent Sebastian Renz from for the price of 3,427 pesos, 202 arrobas sugar, and 4 slaves. Slaves were notably listed in the same category as animals, signaling the early dehumanization of African enslaved workers. African enslaved workers. It didn't necessarily say how the Africans got here. What did they do with the natives that were already here? They didn't enslave those. They all just, nobody was here. Over the next 15 years, thousands of enslaved Africans were transported to the Americas. Were any Americans being transported around the Americas? They enslaved Amerindians when they couldn't find gold. Amerindians, by the way. They used these terms to throw off the supposed ethnicity of these peoples. Speaking of ethnicity, let's do this. Since we're talking about this and these people are supposedly African, right? Who are these people? These are the supposed natives. These are the same people who came down the Bering Strait, right? These are the Beringia people. So you mean to tell me that these people came all the way across the world to make gold statues of some niggas? This is gold, people. Indians couldn't even smelt metal. What are you talking about? This was the gold they were looking for. Throughout this entire area, the coast of the Caribbean inland, all the way to the Pacific in Ecuador and Peru especially, but also Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil. There was gold found in all these places. I think many people are familiar with the Muisca artifacts. The Muisca people were said to actually be the place where El Dorado was located. According to legend, they would throw gold objects into the bottom of this lake. But despite this, I think that the Quimbaya artifacts are a little more intriguing. Now, before looking at all these artifacts, I just want to make this note. Understand that this is what we see. There's a ton of shit we haven't seen yet. But this is what they actually let out. It doesn't always have to be about race or ethnicity. But what are we talking about here? You finna tell me that Siberians came all the way across the world, my nigga, through the cold, migrated through the ice like a barren sloth, boy. They came through here and they made gold statues of some niggas. They said, yo, this shit gonna be hilarious in the future because they gonna think niggas was actually living here. Joke on them. We just made gold statues of little niggas, thousands of years old. But there's evidence of golden Negroes on the continent. Listen, guys, listen, we gotta make some new books. Hey, listen, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a secret slave trade with the Philippines, right? We're just gonna bring a whole bunch of them niggas over here and say that they came through the Bering Straits, you feel me? Hey man, we gotta get some Chinese niggas over here or something, boy. Look at all these little niggas. Are these figurines that are made by some savage civilization, as they want you to believe? They be hiding the lies now. Look at this. And they were so mad. They like, these niggas got gold, everything, bro. Boy, you know, they was licking they heathen chops. Well, if I could give me a couple of those back to Europe, boy, I'm gonna press them shits out, boy. I'm about to listen. When they saw the gold, they were like, yo, they wild out here with all this gold. Everybody's wearing the gold. They using it for regular stuff. They out there in Colombia. It's almost like a passport. It's almost like the passport bros when they go to Colombia. They be like, look at all these bitches out here. That's how them Europeans was feeling when they were seeing all these niggas with all this gold. And I went back, hey man, write me a letter real quick, bro. Hey man, tell the boys it's wild out here, bro. Do you know how much a kilogram of gold is worth? Right now, today, a kilogram of gold is $169,000. Some of these artifacts are even as high as 24 karat gold. That means over 99.5% gold. These niggas had gold helmets. They had gold kufis, bro. What you talking about? They had gold cups, gold drinking vessels, all gold, everything. Do you know what bro, you got 3 houses sitting on your head right now, bro. What you talking about? This bitch wearing a mansion. And with that being said, who are the people today who wear mansions around their neck, who wear mansions in their ear, who wear mansions around their wrist? Who do you know who wears a $500,000 gold chain? Some things never change. So you finna tell me a Chinese nigga made that? This is just what they let us see. Imagine what they're hiding. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little niggas. 4 little, 5 golden niggers. All I see is a bunch of golden niggers. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little niggers. 4 little, 5 little, 6 little. All these niggas and golden niggers. 1 million little nigger statues. These are just the Quimbaya artifacts. We'll have to make an entire separate video for the Inca artifacts. You know, when they see these niggas over here with all that gold, they about shit a brick. They was trying to do whatever. Said, bro, this shit is life-changing right here, bro. Hey, man, go to America to change your life. They got bitches and gold. Look at here, look at here. Look at here, look at here, look at here. And they mad. They so mad at this that these, once again, it's kind of like, what's your boy, Diego Lara, the dude who was fabricating all of the Mayan artifacts. They was doing the same thing with the Quimbaya artifacts. Plenty forgeries. Hey man, we gotta make these niggas look Chinese. What are we doing? These ain't Siberians, bro. Listen, man, if you find another golden nigga in the ground, bro, just go melt it down somewhere, man. Just keep it. Nah, fuck history right now, bro. We got to get all these little gold niggas up out of here. Maybe melt them down, rework them into some Chinese niggas, go bury them, you know, say, hey, come here, guys, look what I found. You know, some shit like that, boy. We got to flip the script on these motherfuckers. If they keep finding little nigga golden statues in the ground, how is our narrative going to continue to hold up? They invaded the land for gold. Now that gold is used to enslave the entire world. It is the current money of the merchant. If gold wasn't the cornerstone of modern technology and served just purely aesthetic purposes, would it still be as valuable as it is today? Why else are all the central banks buying up all the gold? Most of the gold in the world wasn't purchased, it was stolen. And nowhere on earth has more gold been stolen than from the Americas. For as much gold that was stolen in Mexico, Central and South America, it pales in comparison to the magnitude of gold stolen from within the Western United States. On record, there has been 1,000 times more gold discovered in just the state of Nevada alone than anywhere else in the history of the world. And possibly the same could be said about California. Off the record, the amount of gold that was stolen from these areas is unknown. But what is known is the fact that the same gold stolen from within the borders of America has funded the secret ruling families of the world, who still continuously enslave the people through their stolen gold. If you couldn't use gold to buy food, land, or anything else, would it be as valuable as it is today? If there was a famine in Egypt and the money faileth, what good is gold? Would you voluntarily sell yourself into bondage for the guarantee that you would eat? Why do you think the United States is a corporation and every single American born within the country is backed by an untouchable treasury bond? Why are treasury bonds not backed by gold? Because they are backed by credit, debt, labor, slavery, and bondage. Why else is it called a bond? The power of the bond is silent. And you know what they say about silence.